Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Generative Geek. Today, we are building a AI-enabled language translator and evaluator. This is a very special product project because it makes use of two LLMs in sort of a way where one is creating something and the other is evaluating that thing. In future videos, what I would want to do is make it more like an evaluator and a creator kind of a model where they will be going back and forth, but today I'm laying down the foundation for this by basically just helping you with the steps of how to think about it in a linear flow. And then we'll bring in more agentic flows into it. But as of now, this is a very simple project which reads a database, figures out what text has to be translated. So here we are using Airtable. So this project will make use of Airtable as the database. It will find text for translation by reading from Airtable. Then those records will be sent to Claude for translation. So let's just say you might get a paragraph which is in English, and that will then be sent to Claude for translation into French, right? Claude is going to reply back with, let's say, the French text. We are then going to make use of another LLM. In our case, today I'm going to demonstrate using OpenAI, but you can have any special LLM here. And this LLM will basically start the evaluation and give it a score. And that score will be a representation of whether the translated text fits the needs of as per the rules that have been laid out, right? So if it fits the need, then it's a success, and we'll report back into Airtable with the translation saying, hey, it's a success, and this is the status, and this is what the evaluation remarks were, and this is how the translation looks like. So we're going to build this step by step. I'm going to make use of Google Colab, and we'll make use of the secrets here. So I have all my secrets here. We'll be discussing all of this, run this end to end. I also have the Airtable, and I'm going to talk about how to set up Airtable and stuff like that. So let's get started. So I have my Google Colab open, and what I'm now going to do is the first step is installing all the necessary dependencies. Just a reminder, we are building this. So what all dependencies we are going to need, I'm just going to write down here. I'm going to need Airtable library, which is by Airtable. Then I'm going to need some way to read the environment variables, which will be python.env. Then I'm going to need LangChain for everything around AI that I'm planning to do. So let's get started and let's install these, right? In Colab, the way to install it is you'll say pip install. So any OS command that you want to run, you prefix it with a not sign, like an exclamation sign. So pip install, and it's giving me some suggestions already, saying, hey, pip install by Airtable, and I don't need to have them in two lines. So I'm just going to move this up, python.env, and then I'm going to say langchain, and I also will need langchain underscore anthropic, because we're going to make use of Claude for everything around translation or evaluation. And we'll also install langchain underscore OpenAI. So I'm going to just write this much and run this cell. This will connect to the runtime and then install all the dependencies. Once the dependencies are installed, then will be a good time to come back. And while the dependencies are getting installed, maybe it's a good time to also go to your Google Colab secrets. This is you get that Colab secrets by basically clicking on this key icon and set yourself various keys that you will probably need, right? So in this case, what we are going to need is we are going to need 3 4 types of keys. So you can see all the dependencies are getting installed. The keys that we are going to need in order for this to work well will be Airtable underscore API underscore key. And I'm going to explain to you how you can get all these keys. You will need anthropic underscore API underscore key. You will need OpenAI underscore API underscore key. These are the various keys that we'll need. So what you should do is just copy the name of the key that I have printed here, come back to your keys, and you can come down and say, hey, add new secret. So when you click on this add new secret, this is where you can give the name of the secret. I'm going to make it Airtable underscore API underscore key, the same name that I have it here. And on the right side is where you will fill in the value. So what you should do is you should come to Airtable. So let me explain to you step by step. So just go to airtable.com. And when you go to airtable.com, if you don't already have an account, maybe create an account, and you don't need to pay. I'm still working on the free account. So what we'll do is we'll create I already have a base, but I can start a new base, right? So I'm going to start a new base, and we'll say, hey, create and start from scratch. So click on this create and select start from scratch. It will ask me to select a workspace. If you this is your first time, it will probably automatically also create a workspace for you. So once you have done, I'm not doing anything yet. You can change the name of the base. We'll name it language underscore translation underscore review, and we can give it some appearance. So let's make it yellow. I don't want this, so okay, it won't allow maybe to change the color, and which is okay. We are less interested in the color for now. um, as far as the name of the table, we should just rename it and say translations. This becomes my table name. So this is the entire base. Think of it like a very intelligent spreadsheet application, right? So next, what you should do is you should hover over on this profile icon here, which says account, and go to Builder Hub while being in the same base, right? So base is like a database. So you are in this base, and you just go to Builder Hub. When you go to Builder Hub, it will allow you to, so you will see something like this, and this is where you should basically come to your personal access tokens and create a new token. I already have a token created here, so I'm not making use of that token ID. But this is how you basically use a token, right? So and then or let's just do a new token, right? So I'm going to say collab hyphen new, and you then add a scope. So you first give the name of the token, and then you add a scope. The scopes that we are going to need is data.records read. We're going to read the records. We need ability to write into the database. So I need data records write, and I need a way to basically see what schemas exist, right? So we are going to add that as well, right? Um, so this is how these are the various scopes, and then you can also add the access, right? So which base are we going to use? Because I'm working right now with language translation review, your token is now limited only to this base, right? So when you do this, you'd say create token. It is creating tokens. You can just copy this token, and then come back and edit the value here, right? So if I was using this, I would have just said, hey, come here and edit this value. Or let's just say I'll delete this, come here, I'll say Airtable underscore API underscore key, and go to this text box and paste in the value and enable this box, right? So that's it. With this, your key is now set. Similarly, what you should do is get yourself keys for Anthropic and OpenAI, and these are the keys that we are going to need, right? So you get Anthropic keys by going to console.anthropic.com and platform.openai.com for OpenAI. So once you go there, you can go to the dashboard and you see API keys. You can create a new secret key, right? So you can say, hey, this is collab key, right? So I can just say whatever I want. If you have a project, you will be inside that project, and you can create this secret key, and then copy this key, come back to your collab, and uh, put that relevant value against OpenAI API key. Similarly, what you can do is, I'll delete this key, I don't need this key. You can come to Anthropic, console.anthropic.com, and once the account is signed in, you can similarly create a new key. Obviously, you will need to put in some credits. If you don't have credits, you should put in some credits. This will allow you to the way to get credits is by going to settings, and then looking for general. I'm also trying to figure it out, guys, sorry. So billing, yeah, sorry, billing. I already have few credits loaded. You can add to your credit balance, and you can even enable auto recharge if you want. Similarly, I have credits available on Anthropic as well. So let's go to Anthropic. I have credits available here, and you can say, hey, create key. You will give it some default workspace, give it a name. Let's say column, delete this key. I'm just giving it this name because I want to delete this key after it's generated. You will get the key ID, you copy it, come back to your collab, and set it against anthropic underscore API underscore key. So this is how you basically get your keys. I'm going to delete this key right away. Delete API key, delete. Yeah, so that key is gone. So this is how you set up. Once you have set up, I have not yet come to the part where we have not yet set up the database, as in the tables. I'm going to show you how to do that, but let's get the key part done first, right? So once the keys are done, what we are going to do is the way you access keys from Google Colab. And even before we do that, let's just make the necessary imports, right? So we'll need OS, we'll need google.colab, import user data. So if you go here, you can see how to access. They tell you how to access these keys, right? So that's what I'm doing now. Google.colab, import user data from google.colab, import user data from Airtable, import API. This will be used for Airtable will be used for Airtable related stuff. Then we have from langchain underscore anthropic, import chat anthropic. Next, what we are going to do is we're going to say, hey, from langchain underscore OpenAI, import chat OpenAI. Um, and we'll need prompts. So I'm going to say langchain dot prompts, import chat prompt template, not just the prompt template. We'll import chat prompt template. So I'll say chat prompt template, right? So these are the imports we'll do. Once we have these imports are done, we'll say airtable underscore API underscore key is equal to user data dot get airtable API key. Similarly, anthropic will be user data dot get anthropic API key. The good part is it already gives you a lot of suggestions, and most of those suggestions are good suggestions. But you should still, and it's asking us these two. It has automatically filled. I'll use these later. This is not wrong, but I'm right now only setting up the keys, right? So user data dot get OpenAI API keys. So right, so we have, and it says, hey, it does not have access. It's asking for access, and that's because if you go here, you have probably not we have not given access. So the way you give access is by turning these on, but if these are not on, then it gives you an error saying, hey, you need to give access. So now it's asking for anthropic API key. I'll grant access. When I grant access, it turns on, right? And similarly for OpenAI API key, it doesn't have access, so I'm giving it an access, and you can see that also has turned on, right? So I'm getting this error. Okay. So no, it was not an error. It was some sort of a fake message that was showing up. So now all our keys are set. So we are at a point where our keys are set. Next step is, before we start reading these from the database, we need to design the database schema, right? So I want to read from the database, but I can read only if the structure of the database is designed and defined. So we are going to now read from the database, right? So we are going to set up the database. So let's come back to Airtable, go into our base. So our base is language translation review, and you can already see some columns already there. We're going to change these columns, right? So let's get started. So I have my Airtable now open, and the way to think about it is that this is, if you look at it, this is my the base that I made with when I was doing the preparation for this video. So what we're going to do is we'll come here. We don't need the name of the column to be name. We are going to press on this caret icon, which will then bring in the edit field, and I'm going to name this as original text, and it should be a long text, right? So long text is where you can have a lot of text. It, I think, still has a limitation of 100,000 characters or 100,000 words, something like that. We can debug that, or we can discuss that later. Here my intent is largely to just show you how to use Airtable as a database, right? So next, what we're going to have is the field that we'll call translation. And that should also be the long text. We can have evaluation as the another field, and we'll change this again to long text. So evaluation We can have status. Status basically has a lot of options. I'm going to go with pending, then rejected or approved, right? And we can color code them, saying, hey, rejected is pink or red, pending should be, let's say, grayish, and approved is obviously green, right? So save, and the default option is pending. So let's just save this. So we now have these 4 fields, and this gives us an ability to get started. Okay, maybe we should have another one which says score, right? So and score is usually a number, so we'll have score, and let's have like 2 decimal places in case if the model wants to give 2 decimal places. So I just moved the field. You move the field by just clicking on it and dragging it. So I moved the score field a little to the left. So now that the base is ready, we'll need 2 things. We need the Airtable base ID. So the ID of this base, it's usually this. So if you see the highlighted part, this is the base ID. But I'll also help you understand how to find it, right? So the base ID can be found by going to this help icon. Click on the help, and you should see API documentation. Click on it. And when you click on this API documentation, it is giving you the ID of this base, right? So the ID of this base is APP whatever, right? So you should just copy this, come back into your collab, and now we are setting up Airtable meta attributes, right? So meta attributes are like, what is the Airtable base ID, and I'm hard coding it. You can, if you want, you can even save these things in your Google Colab secrets, right? Or wherever you are storing. The next is, once I have this, the next is the table itself, right? So what is the name of the table? So that as also we should basically put. So we have the base table, base ID, and the name of the table is translation. So Airtable underscore table underscore name is equal to what was the name? Our name is translations. So I'm just going to give it translations. So now it has come inside using the base ID. It now is here, but you can have more tables, right? So I can have another table here, which is like, start from scratch. I can call it new table. So it needs to know which table it has to read, and basis that it will be able to fetch the data, right? So I'm going to delete this new table. We don't need it. Okay. Okay, I'll delete it in a while. I'm finding it slightly hard to click there, owing to all the recording stuff that is there. Let me try again. Yeah. So I'm going to delete this table. So the table is deleted. We have our Airtable attribute set. Now what we can do is, once these keys and these values are all set, we'll come here. We'll say, hey, Airtable is equal to API. If you remember, we imported API, and I'm going to give it my Airtable API key. Next, we are going to say, hey, table is equal to Airtable.table, Airtable base ID, Airtable table name. Now these were auto-filled for me through the suggestion that Google Colab's Gemini gave, and this seems right. So I just run this, and now our Airtable and Airtable is also initialized. Now let's initialize LLMs, right? So initialize LLMs, right? So I'm going to say OpenAI is equal to chat OpenAI, and I'm going to pass it which model we are going to use. I'm going to use GPT-4o, and I'm going to say OpenAI underscore API underscore key is equal to OpenAI underscore API underscore key, right? So we are going to initialize this. Let's see if the initialization went through. Yeah, it went through. And I'm going to have another one. I'm going to call it Claude, and we'll say chat Anthropic. Chat Anthropic. And we are again going to give it the model that we want, which will be model is equal to Claude. I'm going to use 3.5. sonnet 20240620, right? So if you want to see Claude Anthropic model names, you can just do a Google search. It'll give you the names of all the models. You can come down. These are the various models that you can use. If I'm using, I can actually use this one. So Anthropic API, if you are calling, you can say Claude 35 Sonnet. I'm using this one right now, but we can change, like, you can just copy from there and come here and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to use this model. There could be a slight pricing impact, but because this is a very small demo, I'm not that worried right now. Then let's have a target language. So we're going to define our target language as the language in which we want the translations to happen. I'm going with French here. You can make it anything you want, like, so next what we need is that, and I'm going to bring this prompt from my other window so that it is slightly easier. I can do all the explanation. So what happens is, now that we have the target language available, let's look at the prompt, right? So the prompt is, I'm using chat prompt template. We imported this earlier, and we're saying, hey, there's a system message. You are a professional translator. Translate the following text accurately. Return only the translation as a JSON object with a single key called translation. So what we are doing is, I want it to return a structured response. So I'm asking it to give only the JSON with the translation. Otherwise, sometimes when you get back the response, it's mostly like, hey, okay, I have translated the text and here's the translation, right? So in the output itself, you will have to do a lot of filtering. To avoid all of that, I'm just asking it to put things in a JSON with a translation as a key. And I'm explicitly also asking it to not include any explanation, notes, or other text outside the JSON structure, right? So the user messages translate this text to target language, and then we are defining the text, right? So these values will be auto-filled by the LLM. So this is the prompt that we now have. This is my translation prompt. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a method which will be called translate text, right? So I'm going to build with you. So translate text, it's going to take a text, and we are going to say, hey, let's just put the right documentation, translate text using Claude Anthropic, right? So I'm going to use this, share, and then we'll say, hey, import JSON, because we want the it to be a structured response. I'm going to say chain is equal to translation underscore prompt. The LCEL way is you have the pipe operators, and you will say, hey, I'm going to use Claude as the model. And so this is my chain. And then we'll say a response. If you want the response, you will have to invoke the chain. And when you invoke the chain, that is the part where we will have to give all of these things, that what are the values for these variables that we have defined in the translation prompt. So I'm going to say chain.invoke, and you open the curly brace and you say, hey, text is your text, whatever text we are getting from as part of this. So I'll just come here, making it more readable here by doing this kind of thing. And we'll say text is text, and we're going to say the other one is target language, which should be filled with target language, right? So this is how you define your response. Next, what we do is we say, hey, we have the response which will come back. We need to now extract this response from the JSON, right? So if you remember, we have already asked it to give us back the JSON. So I'm going to now get the JSON response back. Like, the response is coming, is sending a JSON. So now that we have the response, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly get started with parsing this response, right? So the way to parse this response is, think about it this way, that the LLM response might not be, though we have asked it to give a JSON, it might still not be a JSON, right? So what we want to do is we will do some sort of a try catch, in the sense that let's first say, hey, let's first try detecting or let's first try doing direct JSON parsing, right? So I'm going to try doing JSON parsing directly. So we're going to say, hey, JSON.loads, JSON.loads, and I will say response.content, right? So this is the response that we are getting. I'm just saying, hey, you know what, do a direct JSON.loads, and from that get translation. That's the name of the key that we had asked it to put in the when we were sending the translation prompt, right? So we are expecting a translation key, and we're saying, hey, you know what, do a JSON loads and find the contents of the translation key. If nothing is found, return an empty string, right? So but there can be situations where the LLM might not respond with a clean output, right? So LLMs are known to kind of at times give these issues, though we are much ahead from what it was back in the, let's say, last year, but now it's much better. But still, it's always a good idea when working with LLMs and you have like these structured JSON outputs that are coming, to still have some try catch blocking there to figure out what could be happening, right? So now what we are going to do is we are going to use regex to find JSON more robustly, right? So there was a JSON decode error. I'm going to now use and it's asking me, it's trying to give me some of this stuff, which does look all right. It's importing RE, which is the regular expression library, and it's saying match is equal to re.search, and then it's searching the entire thing, and it's saying response.re.all. If match, then return json.loads match.group one.get translation, else return nothing, right? So let's accept this does look okay to me for now, and we'll see if there is an issue. We'll again know if it's not working or there is a problem, right? So if match, then return, else return empty. If match, return this, except. And what we can do is now again we can just say except json.decode, or we can have like a even broader catch here. We can say except exception as the error translating text, and we can just return, right? So, and then if everything goes all right, then just return back response.content, right? Final fallback, return raw response. So this is my final fallback, and I'm returning the raw response, right? So ideally it should not come till here, but let's say if it comes till here, then we'll be responding back with whatever response we got, right? So we are looking for the explanation here. We are looking for the translation in the translation key. So now I'm just going to say, okay, this is my translate text method. My translate text method is ready. My translation prompt is ready. I know how to parse the translation. Now let's set up the evaluation prompt, right? So now define evaluation prompt. The evaluation prompt is very simple. I'm just going to type the entire prompt first and then come back to you so that we're not wasting time just typing, and then I'll explain the entire thing to you. So the prompt is here. It's chat prompt template.from message. That's how you use chat prompt templates, and chat prompt templates allow you to have these kind of variables in the formatted string. So we have a system message which says, hey, you are a translation quality evaluator, rate the translation on a scale of 0 to 100 based on accuracy, fluency, and preservation of meaning, right? Then we have the user prompt, which is like, we're going with 3 quotes, and we are saying original text, translation, evaluate this translation and provide a score from 0 to 100. We can even say up to, you can use up to 2 decimals. So scores like 93, 5.28 or 18.12 are okay, right? So because in our table we have defined the table to have 2 decimal places for the score column, right? So if you remember, we had defined it that way when we were looking at the score column. If I go to the edit field, you can see that there are 2 decimal places that we have, right? So a brief explanation. So evaluate this translation and provide a score, and format your response as score, which should be a number, and explanation should be your explanation. So this becomes my prompt. Now, same way that we had the thing for evaluation of or translating the text. Now let's do the thing where we are first fetching the records from the database, right? So we have built the skeleton prompts. Now I want to see how to fetch records to translate, right? So let's build a method which says def fetch text to translate, right? So this method, what it will do is it will fetch records from Airtable. It's always a good idea now that nowadays that we have so much of AI assistance available to basically use write comments wherever you can, right? So fetch records from Airtable that needs translation, and we are going to say records is equal to table.all, and I'm going to give it a formula, and my formula is that status should be pending, right? So I'm using the status field, and we are saying this is the status field. If you remember, this is my status field, and if the status is pending, then only process it, right? So then only pick it up for processing, right? So then only pick it up for processing. So all these records, if you look at it in the visual, all these records will get picked up, and we'll start seeing all these records. Next, what we are going to do is once the records are picked up, we want to just return the records, right? So this will fetch the text to translate. Once the text has been fetched to translate, we want to call the translate text itself, right? So we will basically be fetching the records, then sending it to Claude for doing the actual translation, right? So, and once the translation is done, then we'll do the evaluation. So let's also in parallel start writing a main method which will do all of these things in sequence. So I'm defining the main method, and we'll say, hey, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to fetch text to be translated from Airtable, right? So the way to do it is we already have a method. I'm going to call this method. So records fetch text to translate, found these many records to translate, right? So, and I'm going to just put in some random entries here, right? So let's just open chat.openai.com and give me random text about a beautiful city in India. Your text should be 200 words at least, right? So I'm just asking ChatGPT to create some random text for me. It's going to create this random text, and once I have the random text, I can then basically take this text and do something with it. So I just copy this text and I'll put this text in the original text. Now Airtable also has this setting here. If I do this, I can select the extra tall setting, and that will allow me to have like wider column visuals actually. And give me another variation of it with a twist, right? So I'm just asking it to give me another variation. Jaipur is not just a city, it's an emotion woven into pink sandstone. At sunrise, the amber fort stands tall. All of that, right? So I'm not reading out the text. I just want it to generate some text for me. And then I'm just going to copy this text, create another record, and yeah. So this is how the text is looking like. I'm just going to say pending, and I'm going to say pending, right? So I have two records which are pending. Now let's just see. I'm going to run the main and see whether it picks up the two records or not, right? So I've run the main. Okay, I need to call the main now. So I'm calling the main, and I'm getting an error. It says invalid permissions or model not found. Invalid permissions of the requested model was not checked. Both your user and token have the required permission. The model names is. So let's see what is the Airtable base ID and what is the table name. So my base ID is translations. Let's see if I have the right permissions for the token. Collab new token, and language translator and language data records read, schema basis read. Okay, seems like I have this thing correct, and I'm still getting Airtable error, which is 403, which means the key is the actual problem here. Let me just debug this. Let's run this again. And I'm getting the error again. What is the name of the table? The name is translations. Let's look at the Airtable attributes once again. Uh, Airtable base ID app and ending with X. App ending with an X, yeah. And table is translations. Okay, so here I think there's a S missing, so I'm just going to change the name of the table from translation to translations and rerun this cell. Uh, so I'm rerunning the cell. I'll rerun all the cells now and rerun the main. Now let's just rerun the main again. I'm still getting an error. Okay, let me run this cell again. Right. Maybe there was some issue with the cell running, so I'm just running all the cells again. uh, Run the main again. Okay, so this time it found two records to translate. So the issue was actually the table name was incorrect. Now let me just go here and say this is actually approved. Let's just say, right? So I've changed the status from pending. All I'm trying to see is if this thing is working or not, right? So is my formula working or not? Now let's run the main again. It should only find one record. Yeah. So we are good. I'm just going to revert this back to pending. We have the text available now. What we should ideally do is, we had in the main, we had the first step, which was fetching the records that needed to be translated. The next step is taking those records and translating them using Claude, right? So translate records using Claude Anthropic, right? So I'm just going to take these records and I'm going to run a translation. So I'm going to say translation is equal to, I have the translate text available, and I'm going to say if what let's just see what our method takes, right? So my method takes a text. So I'm just going to say, actually, you know what? Because this is an array, it doesn't make sense to send the entire array. What I'm going to do is, once we have the records, I'm going to run a loop. So I'm going to say for record in records. So this is an array for record in records. We are going to now say, hey, now step number two is translate text using Claude, right? So I'm now going to say, hey, translation is equal to translate underscore text. And here, when we get the record, I'm going to say record underscore id is equal to record, and Airtable sends a field called id. So I'm going to keep that id because I'll need this id for updating. And I'm going to say original underscore text is equal to record. We are going to say fields, and this will give me all the fields, and the name of my field is original text, right? So I'm going to fetch original text. So we'll say original text, and if original text is not found, the reason I'm using get is so that I can, it doesn't give an exception and gives me back an empty string, right? So this way I get the original text. Now when I call translate text, I can pass original text to it and the translation, right? So um sorry, I can pass it the original text. Let's just see the method once. Yeah, so it just takes the text and then it will do its magic. So let's see what translation comes back, right? So I would want to print the translation. I'm not doing any evaluation yet. So for the simplicity's sake, I'm just going to keep one record for now. Let's run it once and see what prints we get, right? So okay, could not resolve authentication method. Expected either API underscore key or set for authorization. Which one failed? Anthropic failed. Let's see how we are defining Claude. So I have not set the key, and that's why I think it failed. So if you see the above line, I have very clearly defined how it should use the key for OpenAI. Here, the way you do is you should say anthropic underscore API underscore key is equal to anthropic underscore API underscore key. I've rerun the cell and I'm hoping it will work this time. Or maybe what I should do is, Yeah, I have actually done that. So now let's run this main again. Found one records to translate. Uh, must be going to Claude right now in a loop. Okay, so the original text is Jaipur is the enchanting and whatever. But where is the translated text? Translation came back as none. Something did not work. So we'll have to now debug that. So let's get started with the debugging part now. As a first step, I think what we should do is this is my method translate underscore text. I'm just going to print response.content here, right? So just to see what is coming back, right? So I'm just putting this in a block here and I want to see what comes back, right? So I'm going to say main again. It will find one record. It should print the original record, should take the original record, send it to Claude. Then, okay, this is how it is. So there is a key and it should be easily fetchable, like it's responding in a proper JSON. So let's see why we are not getting this key, right? So translation, I should have got something back, right? So let's go to translate text. We have return json.loads response.content.get translation. If you don't get translation, what is the name of the key? Key is translation. I'll just copy the key once. uh, why is this thing not coming? Okay, I'll also print once before we return. I'll print this just to see what we are getting, right? So this is how I generally do my debugging. And I'll again print this. So run this again. And then so the Claude is definitely returning. It's our parsing which is causing the issue, right? So we need to fix the parsing. Problem is not with Claude, problem is with our parsing, right? So um, I find this is my, why did it not print what I asked it to print? Or maybe it did print, but there was the, okay, I think the problem is with this statement, right? So uh, but am I seeing three lines? I'm only seeing two lines. Why? Ideally I should have seen three lines. So let me just, like, change something here. I'll make it like this. Run this again, and now run main again and see what comes back. For some reason, I'm not seeing two of these blocks, right? I should have seen two of these blocks show up. Uh, So I have done a few more edits, and what I've noticed is that there was some issue with our code, and I've just simplified it a little. So now what I'm doing is in the translate text, I'm returning the translation, and then I have, if there's a JSON decode error, I'm first searching for curly braces, and then whatever is the content, I'm finding that, and then I'm matching it to get the translation, and I'm returning that back, right? So I made that change. I'll run this cell once, and then let's come back and run the main again. Found one record to translate, and it's still working on it. Okay, and I can see it's saying inside JSON decode error. So you see there is an issue with the way the JSON is getting returned from the LLM, and therefore we had that except block. So I can see that the translation is coming back like this, right? So this is what we are getting. This is the entire translation, and that's all right. Like, we can work with this. So now our translation is also getting fetched. What we now need is a way to define, so we have done the translation. Now let's do the evaluation, right? So we now need to call evaluate translated text. and give it a score, right? So we have the evaluation prompt ready, but I don't think we created a method to do the evaluation itself, right? We'll do that here itself. So the evaluation prompt is ready. Next is where we should basically take and say, hey, um, evaluate the translation, right? So I'm going to say uh, def evaluate evaluate underscore translation. So this becomes my method. I'm saying evaluate translation, and it is giving me a lot of suggestion, but I'm not taking it because last time I we ended up in some errors. That's better to write things from hand. So I'm saying we'll take the original text and the translation, and I'm going to evaluate using OpenAI, right? So I'm using OpenAI. So same way we'll have the chain evaluation prompt. I've just accepted it, but we'll go through it. Evaluation prompt and OpenAI. Yeah. So I have the evaluation prompt here. So we are taking the prompt, and OpenAI was defined earlier. Then we are taking the response as chain.invoke, whatever is the original text and the translation, right? And next, what we want to do is before we return back, we want to parse the score, right? So parse the score from the response, right? So if you remember, we asked it to give us a response like this. So we want to pass the score from the response, right? So our score will be score, or we can say evaluation underscore text is the response dot content. So this is my response dot content becomes my evaluation text, and now my score line will be basically line for line in evaluation underscore text. And what we are doing is we basically get this as a line, right? So, or let me just show this to you once, and then we can work with it. So evaluation text, and we can print the evaluation text. So let's print the evaluation text, and then let's call this method, right? So we'll call the method. We'll say, hey, evaluate text, original text, and the translation. We'll run this again. Let's run the main again. On records to translate. Maybe I should not do so many Claude calls right now, right? So just to save time. And still running. So, and the score is 98.75. So if you look at it, this is how it is coming, right? So these are all the evaluation lines that we are getting. So the first line is score. The second line is explanation, but we'll have to, this is not coming as a JSON. So we'll have to write some parsing logic back, right? So, and that's what I was trying to do here. So we have printed the evaluation text. Now we'll say score line is equal to of all the lines for line in evaluation text. So I'll just quickly write this. Um Line in evaluation text and dot split. We are splitting on new line. If line starts with score, then take the first array in value, right? So whatever is the first line, so score becomes for us float of score line split on colon. We'll take the first one and we'll strip, and we'll say score is score, right? So that becomes the score. uh, so then we can say, hey, return score as score, and evaluation as evaluation underscore text, right? So I can return, we can return this from the message now, right? So from this method now. So this method is ready. We have this, and I can remove the prints that we had here. So I can remove the print, I can even remove the evaluation text, and this method now has the evaluated text. Now what we need to do is as a fourth step, we need to basically come back and see what is my, so I should say evaluation is this. So and we have evaluation is equal to evaluate with original text and translation, and we should now update the Airtable record, right? So the last step is, if you remember, is where once we get the evaluation, we'll update the record basis whether it's failed or passed. So I'm now at this. So update Airtable with results, right? So we don't have that method. So let's create that method once. So we'll have def. We'll call this update Airtable record. So I'm going to call this def update Airtable record, and we're going to pass it the record ID. It needs the record ID. So record ID, if you see, I'll just create a column here called record ID. Is if we come here, it's record underscore ID, and this is the unique record ID that Airtable gives each record. And this ID is sent back. So this is the one that gets saved here. If you want, I can just print saying, hey, record print record underscore ID. And okay. So yeah, so now update record ID, and we'll have the translation and the evaluation, right? So now we are going to come here, we'll say update Airtable with translation and evaluation results. We'll say score is equal to evaluation, and within that we are sending the score. Status is equal to approved if score greater than 90, else rejected, right? So we have a very simple way of defining status now. This is, and then we'll say table dot update. We are saying record ID is this record ID, and then we are passing the status as status translation, uh, and within evaluation we should ideally pass evaluation, because that has the score as well. So status translation status evaluation, and I think we should also do the score. We should do the score should be score. Yep. So this is how the table needs to be updated. Let's see if it happens. It should happen. I don't see a reason why it should not happen, but let's pass it. Let's pass update Airtable record. We'll pass the record ID, we'll pass the translation, and we'll pass the evaluation. If everything is done successfully, then let's just print that certain processing has happened. Oops. Processed record, score, evaluation, status, right? So now I'll come back, and I'll run the main again, right? So this time we have in our main, we have one record right now. Um, I'm going to run this again. Found one record. If you see the record ID is getting printed, it is REC ends with 0L, and we come here and we can see this is the one. It's OL basically. This is how Airtable will. It's saying record score is 98.5, explanation and processed record. Now let's come to the database, and you can see it says approved, right? So this one is approved. Now let's take this to pending again and see. And I'm using a very powerful model here like Claude. But what you can do is you can have a less powerful model generate the text for you, and a more powerful model like evaluate it for you. Uh, so depending on how you want to look at things, you can have or both very very powerful, depending on what your budget is and what your need is. You can do it. Now I have the other method, which I have other text which I have made pending. So let's look at that text now. So I'm going to run this now. Found one record to translate. Has to be sent to Claude, then to OpenAI. Yeah, so it gives some text, and OpenAI says this one is even better with 98.75, right? So status is approved. What we can even do is I can even change the model, right? So if you look at my translation where we created when post the translation, when we were looking at the evaluation, we can even have saying, hey, instead of doing evaluation using OpenAI, I can have another model here. Like, I can say, hey, evaluate using Claude. And here all I have to do is just say Claude, right? So if I do that, it should ideally just send it to Claude for evaluation. Now let's do this again. This got saved. I'm just going to change all of this, move this again to pending, and see what comes back, right? So I'm seeing the translation that we are entering still is like a JSON. I should probably update the code so that it's not in these curly braces. We should only pick from here, whatever is the key value of that key. But okay, you get it what I'm trying to do. So now let's run the main again. This time, what we are doing is we are using Claude to generate the text, and we are using Claude to evaluate the text. If you see, I just changed the name of the model. Um, and that is all you have to do. If you can define your models up, you can use this same way to figure out if it's a to basically send it to some as to one model for generation, the other model for evaluation, right? So processed record score is 97.85. This Claude gave it a slightly lesser score this time with 97.85, but nothing changed for us, right? So if you look at it, all our things are have been updated. All I need to do is just make this small change so that but that's for another video or another time. This video has already gotten too big. So we'll stop here. I hope you learned something new, something interesting, and if you did, this notebook code will be all shared. I'm going to obviously change all my keys, and I suggest you don't share your keys with anyone as well. So thank you for your time today. I hope you learned something new, something interesting, and do subscribe to Generative Geek. That's the only humble ask that I have. If you like the video, please do like. It's a good signal so that I know what type of content you like. Thank you so much. That's all I ask in exchange. Thank you.